The boss, also known as the I'll break your heart and your arm mummy. For me, she's the most well-written female character in gaming history. And I don't say that lightly. This comes from someone who spent far too many hours debating the merits of Metal Gear Solid 2's plot on forums that are probably still stuck in 2008. But I digress. If there's one thing Metal Gear Solid 3 does perfectly, it's making you feel deeply conflicted about war, loyalty, and betrayal. You thought your last performance review was harsh. Try having your mentor, the legendary leader of the Cobra unit, drop the emotional bombshell of the century as she reveals, in her final moments, that she's been playing you like a damn fiddle. Kill me now. Do it, she says. In that moment, you almost wish your biggest challenge was watching Eva remove Snake's transmitter in the cave while your whole family watching. But the real question is, was her way of thinking right? Understanding her way of thinking can be a bit confusing, much like a snake's predicament. One moment, you're lost in the jungle, grappling with your sense of purpose, and the next moment you're suddenly played by a psychopathic Zap Daddy who is also a physical restraint and roleplay enthusiast. Her philosophy is centered on the concept of ultimate sacrifice, where loyalty to a mission or ideology takes precedence over personal desires, and even morality. She believed that true global peace could only be achieved through painful personal loss, a price she was willing to pay. For her, advancing a larger, often hidden agenda meant betraying her comrades and accepting her own death as the cost. Yet, the tragedy lies in the conflict between her noble idealism and the harsh reality she faces. The guilt that results from this clash gnaws at her sanity, manifesting in every word and action. Far from being an untouchable warrior, she is a woman haunted by her own choices, adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions, with no escape except the inevitable death she must confront. Her psychological complexity, tragic as it is, captures the darkest aspect of the human condition, the inner turmoil of a self perpetually at war with the concept of the greater good. This belief echoed the age-old adage, "The road to hell is paved with good intentions." The boss's version of a satellite navigation to global peace clearly avoided all toll roads and common sense. We've all met someone with good intentions who somehow ends up burning down the house by accident while trying to help. Big Boss and Zero embody this idea. Their attempts to honor the boss's will didn't just fail. They spiraled into chaos, destruction, and a global conflict of catastrophic proportions. Despite his nickname as the legendary soldier, Big Boss never truly understood the boss's sacrifices and beliefs. After her death, he thought true freedom could only be achieved through military force, crafting a world where soldiers fought for their own causes. But in Big Boss's hands, freedom became a twisted farce. Instead of the global peace the boss envisioned, he built a world where violence was the solution to everything. His philosophy of soldiers' freedom quickly devolved into a personal vendetta, not against the system, but against himself. Zero, the man who wanted to control everything from behind the scenes, could have used the philosopher's money to buy the James Bond franchise, but instead, he believed humanity's future required total surveillance and control. He saw the boss's death as a necessary step for his larger vision, but rather than honoring her sacrifice, he reduced it to a game of world domination. His attempt to impose peace through the Patriot's AI system led to a dystopia where freedom was replaced with control. The Patriots were supposed to protect humanity, but in reality, they stripped it of its agency. Both Big Boss and Zero, in their misguided attempts to honor the boss, became victims of their own interpretations. The boss sacrificed for peace, a peace that could only be achieved through personal loss, not power or control. Yet, They misread her sacrifice as a call for war and domination. The result? A world fractured by war and surveillance, the very conflicts she sought to prevent. Their good intentions didn't pave the road to peace. They turned it into a highway to hell. Big Boss and Zero weren't just casualties of the boss's ideals. They were victims of their own hubris, unable to grasp the deeper, tragic nature of her mission. They, too, became sacrifices in the quest for peace they would never see. This pattern isn't unique to the boss. In real life, leaders, whether benevolent or tyrannical, often fail to see how their noble goals can result in disastrous consequences. Take Neville Chamberlain, for example. In the 1930s, he believed that appeasing Hitler would secure peace in Europe. His catchphrase, "Peace for our time," the outcome? A delay tactic that emboldened Nazi Germany, leading to further devastation. Much like Chamberlain, the boss believed she was acting in the best interests of the world. But in the end, she was a pawn in a larger game. Her idealism, while inspiring in its intent, was shattered by the cold, brutal reality of power. Another example is the Vietnam War. In the 1960s and early 1970s, the US government was convinced their intervention was necessary to stop the spread of communism. You could have convinced me they were just trying to stop the spread of the Beatles' bowl haircuts in the 60s. But no, it was communism they were worried about. The result? A bloody quagmire that turned Southeast Asia into a disaster zone. 58,000 US soldiers dead, a country divided, and an endless stream of memes about how disastrous that event was. Sound familiar? Yeah, the US was doing it for the greater good, and that greater good felt about as real as the storyline in Metal Gear Survive. And then there's the absolute disaster that was the Iraq War in 2003. The invasion was justified by the need to eliminate weapons of mass destruction, an objective that seemed righteous at the time. Instead, it devolved into a chaotic, multi-decade conflict, the rise of ISIS, and the destabilization of the entire Middle East. The rationale behind it was clear: sacrifice the few for the good of many. But instead of peace, the world got endless conflict, and Iraq was reduced to rubble. So, is the boss right? The problem with her philosophy is that it fails to acknowledge the real costs of sacrifice and overlooks the inherent flaws in the systems she's trying to serve. Sacrificing yourself for a cause sounds noble, right? But blindly following a system that's as trustworthy as a codec call from Master Miller, that's a fool's errand. And that's the real tragedy. The boss's death may have been noble, but it didn't fix the world's problems. It simply kept them spinning in the same vicious cycle.